Good morning,
Rabbi.
Getvach Shmatov. We are learning Mishna Yevamos, Parak Vav, Chapter 6, Mishna Daled, Mishna 4. Kohen Gadol, the high priest, Lo Yisa Almana, may not marry a widow. That's what the Torah says. Kohen Gadol may not marry, as we'll see soon, Kohen Gadol can only marry a virgin. So Lo Yisa Almana, he may not marry a widow. Bein Almana min ha'erisin, whether she is a widow from erisin, from betrothal. Bein Almana min ha'nesuin, whether she's a widow from a full completed marriage. If she's only a widow from erisin, from betrothal, you might think, well, she's still a virgin because by erisin there's no cohabitation. It's only after nesuin, only after the completion of the marriage. So if she's a widow from betrothal, you might think, well, she's still a virgin, shouldn't be a problem. The answer is no. The mere fact that she is an almana, that she's a widow, she was married to her previous husband. She couldn't just walk away. She needed to bill a divorce from him. And therefore, when he dies, she is an almana, she's a widow. And the Torah says the Kohen Gadol cannot marry a widow. Nor can he marry a girl who is a bogeres. Now, let me read to you here from how this is explained. A girl is considered physically mature when she reaches the age of 12, what we call bas mitzvah, and has at least 2 pubic hairs. At this point, she enters a state called na'arus. This na'arus state lasts for 6 months, after which she achieves the final stage of adulthood called bagris. So bagris is the stage of, let's call it, complete physical maturity. And bogeres is what a girl who reaches bagris is called. Now, from the beginning of the stage of bagris, the physical signs of virginity naturally begin to diminish, even if she never cohabited. The Torah says that a Kohen Gadol has to marry a psula, a virgin. And which means that if he decides to get married after he becomes a Kohen Gadol, whoever he marries has to be a psula, a virgin. If he was married before to someone, when he becomes Kohen Gadol, he doesn't have to divorce her. It just means that a Kohen Gadol who marries has to marry a virgin. Now, a girl who reaches the stage of bagris, which means she already is past 12 and a half, physically, her as they call the physical signs of virginity start to diminish. And therefore, at that point, she is not the basula. She's not the full virgin that the Torah is talking about that a Kohen Gadol may marry. So therefore, the Tanakhama says he may not marry the begeres. Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Shimon, machshirim begeres. Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Shimon say, that the Kohen Gadol may marry the begeres. At the end of the day, did she cohabit? No. And therefore, she did not cohabit. Therefore, she's still considered a basula according to them, a virgin according to them, and therefore he can marry her. The halacha is not like Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Shimon, and therefore the halacha is that a Kohen Gadol may not marry begeres. Now, according to everyone, the Mishna now says, Lo yisa es mukas eitz. However, if let's say this girl was wounded by a piece of wood that knocked out her virginity, then everybody agrees that he cannot marry her. Because the point there is that by this blow that came from the piece of wood, that completely destroyed, her virginity is completely destroyed. When she's a begeres, it's not completely destroyed. It just basically called diminish. But here we're talking about that she was wounded in a way that completely destroyed, the blow completely destroyed her virginity, and therefore everybody agrees the Kohen Gadol may not marry her. And it's not just a wood, any kind of thing that were to wound her, bang on her in that area, that would break her virginity, then already that would make her not be allowed to marry the Kohen Gadol. Okay, next. Eiras es almana. A Kohen Gadol, a Kohen, a regular Kohen, betrothed a almana, a widow. Was he allowed to do that? regular Kohen and marrying an almana, a widow? Yes, he can. He betrothed her. He was a regular Kohen, kosher. Everything was fine. Then guess what happened? V'nesmanali is Kohen Gadol, and before he completed the marriage, he was appointed to Kohen Gadol. So what do you do now? Says the Mishna, Yichnos. He's allowed to marry her. As long as he started the marriage, he did Eris and he started the marriage when it was permissible, he can complete it. Okay, now the Mishnah brings a story, an actual story to prove that point. Umaisa be Yeshua ben Gamla. The story is told of Yehoshua ben Gamla. He was a Kohen. Shakidish es Marisa bas Baisus, who had made Kedushin, a betrothed, a woman named Marisa, the daughter of Baisus, who was a widow. Umino HaMelech is Kohen Gadol. And then before he had the chuppah, the king appointed him Kohen Gadol. He became the Kohen Gadol. The Kanasa. And he married her. So you see from an actual case that as long as the betrothal, the erison, took place when she was, when it was permissible, meaning she became his wife. You know, when a person does kedushin, a person does erison, person gives the ring, that makes this woman his wife. And therefore, it was not just a question of completing it. The halacha is, and as we see from the actual account, that it's permissible to do. Now, next case. Shemeres Yevamos shenafel lifnei Kohen Gadol. How about the cases like this? A Kohen died without children. His wife fell to Yibam to his brother, who was a regular Kohen. So when he was a regular Kohen, she fell to him for Yibam. And before he had a chance to do Yibam on her, to make her his wife, became Kohen Gadol. What happens then? Even though he may have done Maimer, the rabbinic kedushin in her, he may not marry her. Because before, in the case by Erison, she became his wife, even before he was Kohen Gadol. In this case, even though she's got Zika, there's a Zika between him and her, there's a Yibam bond between him and her, that's not marriage. And even if he does Maimer, which is a rabbinic kedushin that we mentioned previously, that the rabbis wanted you to do a kedushin on a woman before you did Yibam, again, that's only rabbinic in nature. And therefore, according to Torah law, all you have here is the Zika, the Yibam bond. That's not a marriage. And therefore, he may not take her, he may not kindness her, he may not do Yibam on her and make her his wife. What do you have to do? You got to give her chalitza. She can't just go scot-free. You got to give her chalitza, because it's a prohibition that stops him from doing Yibam on her. If it's only a prohibition that stops him, the halacha is you can't do the Yibam, but there's still a Yibam bond there, and to free her, you got to give her chalitza. And that's the next part of the Mishnah. Very similar. Kohen Gadol shemeis achiv. Kohen Gadol had a brother. There's a Kohen, right? If he's a Kohen Gadol, his brother has to be a Kohen. And his brother died without children. Now his sister-in-law falls to him for Yibam. Can a Kohen Gadol do Yibam?
No.
Because she's a widow. So what do? Chayletz v'lo miyabim. You do a chalitza, but you don't do Yibam. So a Kohen Gadol cannot do Yibam. But the fact that he cannot do Yibam doesn't free her completely. She needs chalitza to be free. And it's interesting that they bring down here that, that we could have thought that maybe, a person could have thought that maybe, if you think about it, we already know that the Kohen Gadol can't marry an almana. That's the beginning of the Mishnah. Kohen Gadol can't marry an almana. So it should be obvious that he can't do Yibam if she falls to him for Yibam. Why is the Mishnah saying it? So they bring down here from the commentary of Tosfos Yontif the following. We might have assumed that chalitza too may not be performed, because this involves the Yevamos spitting at her Yevim. Part of the process of chalitza is she takes off his shoe. She doesn't spit at him. She spits towards him. Okay? And that's not appropriate to do to the Kohen Gadol. And therefore, you might think that chalitza wouldn't be performed either. Therefore, the Mishnah says no. When the Kohen Gadol can't do Yibam, chalitza is still done. All right.
It's an embarrassment, so...
At the end of the day, you still do it. Okay. Now, so we started the Chofetz Chaim talking about the situation that even if a person is going to be, when a person is going to, even if you believe a person like two, you trust this person like two witnesses. Nonetheless, you cannot accept the Lashon Hara that he says. Now, the exception to that rule, or a case where it was not that way, was in a situation where if the Lashon Hara is a Lashon Hara that has some kind of, call it, constructive purpose. So, for instance, somebody is not behaving properly. Somebody's not doing something, not behaving in a proper way. Not necessarily in a way that you establish him as a Rasha, but, and not necessarily that allows you to tell other people about it, because maybe this person who did something wrong, he's regretting and he wants to do tshuva for it. So you have no right to publicize it. But you have the right in that situation to go to his Rebbe, to his teacher, and to tell the Rebbe about it, tell the teacher about it, so that maybe he can do something about it. Or at least, kind of make sure that he and the other students kind of keep a distance from him, as a precautionary measure, not to be influenced from him. That's where the Chofetz Chaim said as a halacha that if the Rebbe will believe you like two people, then tell it to him. If he's not going to believe you, don't bother. But if he'll believe you like two people, you're allowed to say it to him. That's where we have a situation where if you believe someone like two witnesses, then that you could actually believe it or accept it at a certain level. Loy kain bedavar sheishlit lois alav schus. When mechasrin yedias iser hamaisa ulai b'shkag b'aliyadai or l'sap alav divrei dayv ugnai ba'alma yishli l'samailas. Again, all this is talking about where the guy did something wrong enough that the Rebbe could accept it and stay away. But if it's a situation where, maybe the guy didn't know any better, maybe it was a mistake, or you're just saying bad things about him, or again, you're going after his qualities, which if you remember from before, the Chofetz Chaim said is a type of Lashon Hara that's very difficult to find any kind of constructive purpose for. It doesn't help you the fact that he would believe like two people. It makes no difference even if it's not true, even if let's say it's true. These are situations where the person is not allowed to say it over, but rather he has to go ahead and give the person the benefit of the doubt. So therefore, as a general rule, in a situation where you hear Lashon Hara from someone who you believe like two people, but at the end of the day, he's not saying anything that he has any right to say. In that kind of situation, we say the fact that he is believed like two people doesn't help. If there's a situation where he has some kind of a right to say it, a situation where he is acting in a way that you can tell the teacher to keep away from him, to keep the students away from him, that's one thing. But if we're talking about a situation where you're not going to say it over, the fact that it's being said by someone who you believe like two people doesn't help you to believe it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.